So I like watching documentaries, and specifically the stories of people who achieve greatness, and oftentimes they create something new. And so for me, I grew up in the era of action sports when it was being developed. In fact, I was a freestyle BMX kid, skateboard. We had a huge ramp in our own backyard. I loved it still today. I'd rather watch X Games than NFL, but that's a whole nother story. So I caught this documentary called Waiting for Lightning, and it just reminded me of how cool it is to see someone like Danny Way who helped create, like innovate a whole sport. In fact, he's responsible for creating the mega ramp, the huge ramp you see in the X Games and Dew Tour and stuff like that. He's the guy that jumped a skateboard over the Great Wall of China. So anyway, you don't have to worry about all that. But what I love is that there are some people in this world that have a vision and an idea, and then they go and create it. It's actually what I love about church planters. So pastors are wonderful. I love pastors, but there's something about a church planter that's amazing, because a church planter hears a call from God and they respond, and one day there's no church, and the next day there's a church gathered, like a lasting pillar of truth in a community. Like it begins, and in that way they're sharing the creative nature of God himself. I mean, it's one of the attributes of God. There was nothing, God spoke, and creation existed. God spoke and life was formed. And so when church planters plant a church, they're going from no church plant. There's darkness in a community. There's no, there's just not a church. And they take this bold step of faith, and by their actions, by their response, by their obedience to God, boom, a church is born. And I love it. I love the creative nature of it. I love how it is deeply connected to the character and the attributes of God. When we're created in his likeness, we're created as co-creators on this earth. We're the people that can actually, by God's grace, start something that otherwise would not be. And, of course, Jesus builds his church. I get that. But it's church planners in their faith and their faithfulness are the ones who step into a community in a place where there is no church. And just by the act of gathering together, that bold step of faith, they create a new body of Christ, gathered to be a light in the darkness. And so if that's you, I just want to encourage you, keep pressing on. God's called you to this. He'll provide for you. And when you plant your church, when you gather the church, you're part of this legacy of faithful followers of Jesus that have come before you, that have started the churches that, line our streets. Some are still alive and thriving, some are struggling, but all of them, there was a time before there was no church, and someone stepped out in faith and did it, and now it's your turn. It's your turn. Plant that church. Speak life. Join in with God and his creative nature. You'll be glad you did, and it will make a difference both here and now and for eternity. Hey, just a quick word to encourage you, and I hope that does.